Hi everyone, I'm Emily. Thanksgiving was supposed to be a day to feel thankful and spend time with family, but for me, it became one of the hardest days I've ever been through. I'm a senior in high school, and I love architecture and design. This year was important for me because I was working toward my future, but things at home have been different ever since my mom passed away and my dad remarried. Now, my stepmom Susan lives with us, along with her 2 kids. It's been tough, with lots of mixed emotions. My dad tries to keep the peace, which makes it hard for me to talk to him about anything related to Susan. She always finds a way to make everything about her and her kids, and I often feel left out, like I don't belong in my own home. As Thanksgiving got closer, the house was busy with preparations. We were expecting a lot of people, extended family, my dad's close friends, and even some of Susan's friends. Even though I was nervous, I was excited about one thing: my college acceptance letter. I had gotten into one of the best architecture schools in the country, and I planned to surprise everyone by announcing it during dinner. The house smelled amazing, with roasted turkey and pies baking. Everyone gathered around the dining table, chatting and laughing, and for a moment, I felt a little less anxious. I looked around at my cousins talking, my dad telling jokes, and Susan acting like the perfect hostess. When dessert came out, I knew it was my chance. My heart was racing, but I stood up and tapped my glass to get everyone's attention. "I have some great news," I said, trying to stay calm. "I've been accepted into the architecture program at..." But before I could finish, Susan interrupted me. She spoke in a light tone, but her words were hurtful. "Oh, Emily, always dreaming. Let's focus on what really matters, okay?" Everyone at the table looked confused, but Susan didn't stop there. She reached across the table, grabbed my acceptance letter out of my hand, and tore it into pieces. The pieces fell like sad little bits of confetti. "This is what I think of your so-called achievement," she said. "It's trash, just like your unrealistic dreams." The room went completely silent, and the air was thick with shock. I stood there, pieces of my acceptance letter scattered on the floor, feeling like my heart had broken just as much. I looked around, hoping someone would stand up for me or say something, but there was only silence, followed by murmurs and awkward looks. My dad, caught between his wife and me, said nothing. With tears in my eyes, I excused myself from the table, the sound of Susan's mocking laughter ringing in my ears as I ran to my room. That night, I realized how truly alone I felt in that house. I came to understand the painful truth that family isn't just about being related by blood, it's about the love and support they choose to give or withhold. This Thanksgiving, I didn't feel grateful. Instead, I was filled with a determination to prove Susan wrong and to reclaim my dreams, no matter what it took. After Thanksgiving, the house was filled with chaos and disbelief. Guests quickly left, whispering as they hurried out. The house felt colder and emptier than ever. In the quiet that followed, I couldn't stop crying. My dad, clearly conflicted, avoided looking at me. His silence confirmed my worst fear. He wasn't going to stand up to Susan, even after everything. Feeling desperate, I called my uncle, who had always been supportive. He picked up right away, and as I told him what had happened, his comforting words gave me a small bit of hope. "We'll figure this out, Emily. This isn't the end of your dreams," he reassured me. The next morning, following my uncle's advice, I met my best friend Alex for coffee at a busy cafe. We came up with a plan. "We need evidence," Alex said, determined. "We need to show your dad who Susan really is, not just because of the college letter, but for all the times she's mistreated you and your step-siblings." Our first step was clear. We needed to confirm my college acceptance. I reached out to the admissions office, explained what had happened, and they were understanding. They promised to send a new letter and an email confirmation. But that was just the beginning. Over the next few weeks, Alex and I quietly started gathering information from people who knew Susan, former friends, colleagues, and anyone who had experienced her manipulative behavior. The stories we collected were eye-opening. Each one revealed more about Susan's true character. She had sabotaged a step-sibling's job application and even isolated my dad from his old friends. As we pieced everything together, the real Susan became clear, a person who was far more controlling and harmful than I had realized. Susan, perhaps feeling untouchable, began pushing her limits even more. She made big purchases without asking my dad, and her behavior at some of his business events upset important contacts. Her arrogance was affecting not just our family life, but also my dad's professional world. One evening, as I was going through all the evidence we had gathered, my uncle called. "It's time," he said. "Your dad needs to see this before Susan causes more harm." Armed with a folder of proof, including emails from the college and testimonies from people who had been affected by Susan. I approached my dad. He looked tired, like a shadow of the lively person he used to be. "Dad," I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking, "I need you to see something important." As he read through the documents, listened to the recordings, and saw the confirmation of my college acceptance, I could see his emotions shift. He looked sad, but also like he was realizing something big. It was clear that he now had a tough decision to make. Susan had been controlling our lives from behind a mask, pretending to care while secretly manipulating everything. Finally, my dad spoke, his words heavy with meaning. "We need to talk, Emily," he said. "We need to talk about Susan." The plan was set for a Sunday afternoon. We made it seem like a casual family gathering, but it had a serious purpose. This was the day I intended to reveal the truth about Susan, not just to my dad, but to everyone who needed to know. We invited a few key people, those who had dealt with Susan and had their own stories to share. My uncle helped organize everything, making sure everyone understood how important this day would be. It was time to bring the truth to light. As we prepared the living room for our guests, my uncle reminded me to stay calm. When people started arriving, the atmosphere was filled with tension and anticipation. Susan greeted everyone with her usual charm, completely unaware of what was about to happen. My dad, sensing something was up, stayed quiet, giving me a questioning look. Once everyone was seated, I stood up. My hands were shaking slightly, but my voice was strong. "Thank you all for coming today," I began. "I know this seems like a regular gathering, but it's important. It's about my future, and the future of our family." I glanced at my dad, who nodded for me to continue. "This isn't easy, but it's necessary. Many of you have had experiences with Susan that were less than positive, and today we are bringing those to light, not out of spite, but to find the truth." I turned to Mrs. Johnson, a former colleague of Susan's. She shared how Susan had undermined her work project, leading to her unfair demotion. After she spoke, others began to share their stories. Mr. Thompson, our neighbor, talked about a community event that Susan ruined by interfering. With each story, the picture of Susan's manipulative behavior became clearer. Susan's face grew pale, and her usual calm demeanor began to slip as more people spoke. My dad's expression darkened with each new revelation, as he started to piece together the truth he had been avoiding. When it was my turn, I held up my shredded college acceptance letter, now taped back together, a symbol of what Susan had done. "This was my college acceptance letter, which Susan tore up on Thanksgiving," I said. "It should have been a night of celebration, but it turned into one of the worst nights of my life." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the weight of what had happened. My dad, who had been quietly listening the entire time, finally stood up. His usual indecision was gone, replaced with determination. "I can't ignore this any longer," he said, his voice filled with emotion. "Susan, these actions cannot be part of this family." Susan tried to defend herself, making excuses and denying everything, but the evidence was too strong. Her true nature had been revealed, and there was no way for her to hide anymore. As the gathering came to an end and the guests began to leave, my dad stopped me at the door. "I'm sorry, Emily," he said, his eyes filled with regret. "I should have seen this sooner. We'll fix this. We'll make things right." That day marked a turning point. It was the beginning of the end of Susan's control over our lives and the start of a new chapter, one led by truth and integrity. After that day, the fallout for Susan was fast and severe. Word of her actions spread quickly through the community, and her carefully built image fell apart. Friends and acquaintances distanced themselves from her, not wanting to be associated with her manipulative behavior. Even her social media profiles became ghost towns, reflecting how isolated she had become in real life. The effects of Susan's behavior didn't just hurt her socially, they also impacted her financially. With her reputation ruined, she found herself isolated from the social circles she once ruled. She lost business opportunities, and the financial strain began to show. Her once carefully controlled world turned into a place of uncertainty and rejection. Meanwhile, with my dad's support, I was able to focus on my future. He helped me reapply to the architecture school, and this time I not only got accepted but also received a scholarship. The pride in his eyes as he handed me the acceptance letter made my heart swell. It was a moment of redemption and a new bond between us. When I moved to campus early, I fully immersed myself in my studies. The college environment was so different from the suffocating atmosphere back home. Here, I wasn't just the girl from a troubled family, I was Emily, the aspiring architect. I thrived in my classes, with my designs praised for their creativity and attention to the environment. The freedom to express myself and be appreciated for my talent was amazing. Back home, my dad decided to file for divorce from Susan. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary for our family to heal. He shared updates with me during our weekly calls, and each conversation felt like a step toward healing the emotional wounds Susan had left behind. A key moment of my new beginning came one sunny afternoon at a cafe near campus. I was surrounded by new friends, chatting with my dad and uncle over video call. I opened another letter from my college, this time inviting me to an exclusive architectural workshop in Europe because of my potential and achievements. As I read the letter aloud, my friends cheered, and my dad and uncle proudly congratulated me. It was a moment of pure joy, showing just how far I had come. My journey, from betrayal to success, was not just about achieving academic or personal victories. It was about taking back control of my life and my identity, which Susan had tried to twist and ruin. This chapter of my life closed with the promise of new adventures, learning, and growth, all built on a foundation of truth, resilience, and the unwavering support of those who truly cared about me. As the sun set over the cafe that day, I realized that the best way to overcome everything wasn't just to survive, it was to thrive. I had proven that no one could stop me from reaching my dreams. That's the end of my story, and I've triumphed over the challenges that were thrown at me. Now, here's a question for you. Do you believe it's always possible to turn personal betrayal into a stepping stone to success? Or are some wounds too deep to heal from? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey of resilience and redemption, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more inspiring stories. Your support helps us keep sharing these kinds of narratives. Thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing your responses.